So, I wanted to go live and talk about something I've been thinking about. So, I just heard about the Trump impeachment passing in the Senate and thinking about whether or not it would pass in the House. And the House is full of Republicans, and I'm not really biased either way towards Republican or Democrat. I'm pretty neutral on this. Like I could really care less about politics at this point. I'm thinking more about monetary policy, and I'm willing to I'm willing to say one of the best things that could happen to United States monetary policy is a Trump impeachment. And ironically, I think that that could be the best thing to Trump getting reelected for the Trumpers, I guess is what people call them. Like, Trump getting impeached could potentially be the best chance he has of getting reelected. Hear me out on this. Like, this is kind of crazy, but it also fits with both his motives and the entire climate over the past few years of multinational relations. So, hear me out. So, the executive branch, which Trump is head of right now, the executive branch includes the Treasury. And the Treasury has direct relations with the Federal Reserve. So the U.S. Treasury is dependent on the Federal Reserve, a private bank in the U.S. that prints our money, literally controls the source of all of our monetary policy. They have complete control over that. And what's really interesting is if Trump gets impeached, that is like he's not kicked out of office, first of all. Like, that's not how impeachment works. Clinton stayed till the end of his second term. I mean, he didn't really have much motive to resign. He'd just finish it up. Nixon, he was under threat of impeachment, and he resigned. You don't have to resign. You don't have to, like, you're not forced to leave office. Impeachment is kind of just like saying you're not a trustworthy person. And, it's kind of like for the same reason when a CEO of a major company has, infidelity stuff, like either, either they do right by their spouse and get a divorce and give a huge settlement, as we saw with Jeff Bezos, or they resign. Depending on, the nature of these things, it's kind of the same thing. So, like, his integrity is called into question officially, which means more internationally than it does domestically. So, what's really interesting is Russia and China hold huge reserves of U.S. Treasury bonds. And this is where you start to see the connections on the board. Our focus is really heavily on China and Russia recently. People care about them because they're more relevant than ever because of the way things have been played, especially with Trump leading the march with China and Russia. So they they have enough U.S. Treasury bonds to tank our markets, but they would be our monetary markets. If they flooded the market with U.S. Treasury bonds, the dollar would collapse. This isn't people losing faith in the economy of the U.S. The economy would come to a halt with a dollar collapse if we didn't have something to replace it at scale immediately. It would come to a halt until we created, and settled on a new money. And I don't know if you've noticed, but crypto has been getting more and more popular. Even in this bull market or this bear market right now, like, it's every major bank in the US and starting to be across the globe has some sort of crypto portfolio right now. the US government has a huge crypto reserve that they've gotten through, possession from, you know, stuff like Silk Road and other things. And, I want to mention real quick to free Ross Ulbricht, but like, it's really fascinating to me because Trump getting impeached would put his whole cabinet under check, and him getting impeached could mean more for our monetary policy than anything else, because that's kind of like his thing. He's the money guy. Like, that's kind of the platform he ran on. Is he ran a company, he knows money, he knows how to make money. And if his integrity is put under question, China and Russia would have reason to, like, real international reason. Like, if you look at these people as like CEOs of company, like, they have a fiduciary obligation to their shareholders, and it would be fiscally irresponsible for Russia and China to not bail on US Treasury bonds if Trump got impeached. But this would be like a song and dance. Like, this is what they would need to do legally. Like, they'd have no other option. It's almost like a stage. Like, they have to do this. And by tanking the US dollar as the reserve currency, all of these countries have major crypto reserves. Not to mention, Coinbase is more user-friendly than most bank websites and easier to get into and, like, easier to understand than most bank accounts. So at this point, if the governments have enough crypto reserves, they could cut out the middleman. They're Federal Reserve banks. Russia's already done it. China doesn't have one, but the US does. And, the EU does, and Britain does. So this could be a way to turn the reserve currency into a way that's like win-win-win across the board for every country, in a way where it would come down to sheer economic power and not just monetary. And this would be good for both, American industry, American banks, and the American government. And that's a win-win-win for our entire economy. The only thing that loses is the Federal Reserve. And I'm not a Trump supporter. Like, I'm not really a political supporter at all. But ironically, Trump getting impeached. Imagine Trump saying, like, my impeachment was the best thing to happen for monetary policy for the entire country. Like, everyone has money now. Their money is like rising, and we have enough reserves in crypto to match everyone's bank accounts. So the economy wouldn't come to a halt for even a moment at that point. Like, everyone's money would be guaranteed, and most of it is digital right now anyway. So all the credit ledgers, all the digital ledgers that bank accounts use, like, people could still use the numbers that they're used to, but it could be backed by crypto holdings. And this is kind of what every single crypto-backed credit card is doing right now. They give you a line of credit based on your crypto holdings. So interestingly enough, like, the Federal Reserve does what crypto makes easy. So if they can cut out the middlemen, not just in the US, but globally, those Federal Reserve banks, it would be the end of an era for the Rothschilds and their empire. And it would be, really interesting to see the way things go, because, man, like, it plays definitely to Trump's character to say, like, my impeachment was, the best thing to happen, to the bank accounts of all Americans. And not just that, like, he'd be able to say he bailed out the bank accounts, savings accounts, pensions of all Americans in every single country with, that gets some sort of benefit from US dollars, whether it's through tourism or whatnot. Like, this could cause a chain reaction that he could potentially be, like, in his mind, hold himself responsible for bailing out the US, like Canada and Mexico, and the entire EU, like, to the point where, like, it would almost make the Brexit a moot point. It would motivate, UK to, like, they'd have no reason not to do the Brexit at that point. So that's really interesting too. Like, it's quite fascinating how this could work out. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if I heard Trump argue for his impeachment to the House of Representatives, like, that would totally play to his ego as well. Like, he could convince the Republicans to impeach him, lay out this game plan, and, like, it would still work. Like, because it's an obligation. It's like a legal obligation for other countries. Like, they'd have to bail on the US Treasury bonds at that point. If he came on and said, like, impeach me and I'm not going to leave office and this is what will happen, and he explained it step by step, the Republicans would be on board. The rest of the world would get the hint. They'd bail on US Treasury bonds, and the Federal Reserve would be left holding the bag. I do have a bias. I have some holdings in crypto, so I would love to see things gain because of this. But needless to say, like, I was excited at the prospect of Trump being impeached because of that. And then when I thought about it longer, I started to realize there's no reason this couldn't work. And I just had to share this because, like, that just feels like something you'd see on the news and just be like, oh, that's Trump. He's a showman. Like, that's the kind of bullshit I feel like is what our world is running on right now. And the sheer ludicrous nature of what I'm explaining is why I'm not having trouble believing it. And that's giving me pause. But I could be the stupidest person in the world, and this could turn out to be, the worst speculation I've ever made. Here's a little bit of wild hopes from, I guess, a small crypto holder looking to strike it rich. Who knows? Yeah, so we'll see. It would be cool. I wouldn't bet my house on it. I wouldn't liquidate all your assets based on this. Because at the end of the day, if I'm right, you're not going to lose anything by not doing anything. So, this is not financial advice. Like, don't make any financial decisions based off of this, because, people who are holding, yeah, they'd make off really well, but everyone else would be right where they left off, and pretty soon after that, even more well off. So, yeah, interesting times. Let's see what happens.